9/7 local time, Gulf of Oman, T-minus 18 minutes until impact. 52 missiles and drones, one U.S. carrier strike group in the crosshairs. While diplomats are still talking in Muscat, every second counts. This is the story of 42 minutes that changed everything. The sea is calm at first. Black water, light wind, heat still hanging over the surface like a second skin. A few hundred miles away, statements are being drafted, back channels are working, and negotiators are trying to keep a regional crisis from detonating. Out here, east of the Strait of Hormuz, that hope feels fragile. The waterway behind this formation carries a huge share of the world's oil. Every tanker captain in the region knows it. Every intelligence analyst knows it. Every admiral knows it. If this corridor closes, markets panic, governments scramble, and militaries stop speaking in theory. Now imagine you're here. Ahead of you rises a Nimitz-class supercarrier, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. In this fictional scenario, nearly 1,100 feet of steel and momentum cutting through the dark. On her decks, roughly 5,000 sailors and aviators, around 70 aircraft in the air wing, fuel lines, munitions elevators, spinning radars, and enough concentrated combat power to reshape a coastline in a single night. Around her, the screen is tight and disciplined. An Aegis cruiser, two Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a Virginia-class submarine somewhere below and unseen, and airborne farther out, an E-2D Hawkeye painting the sky while F/A-18E, F Super Hornets hold their orbits in the humid darkness. This is not a parade formation. It's a floating fortress built to survive what most militaries cannot even track. And tonight, because peace talks are underway, the strategic stakes are even higher. The carrier is not just a warship. It is a message. It says restraint is still possible. It says Washington is watching but not yet crossing the last line. It says there is still time for diplomacy. That is exactly why, in this fictional scenario, hardline planners inside Iran decide to hit it. Not to sink it. They know the odds. Not to win a war in one blow. They know they can. Their goal is narrower and more dangerous. Create a spectacle, bloody the symbol, fracture the negotiations, and prove that even during talks, American power in the Gulf can be touched. A limited strike, they tell themselves. A calibrated humiliation. One deck fire. One smoking image on every screen in the world. One moment of forced American hesitation. From a hardened command center near Bandar Abbas, the plan unfolds under red light and stale air. Wall screens show shipping lanes, orbital tracks, weather, and the predicted movement of the strike group. The package is designed for saturation. 14 ballistic missiles, including anti-ship variants derived from short-range ballistic systems. 16 land attack and anti-ship cruise missiles from mobile launchers along the coast. 22 one-way attack drones. Shahed-type systems and decoys mixed together to clutter radar and burn interceptors. Ballistic threats from above. Sea-skimming threats from the side. Slow drones to distract. Fast weapons to kill. 52 total. Their calculation is simple. The carrier strike group is operating with restraint because of the talks. The Americans won't want escalation. Civilian shipping around the strait will complicate the picture. Coastal geography will shorten warning time. If enough tracks arrive together, even the best system can be forced to choose. And in modern war, forcing choice is often enough. From their perspective, it looks almost elegant. A chess match. A calculated strike. Precise. Limited. Deniable for just long enough to complicate the American response. But they overlook something. Actually, they overlook several things. They assume the carrier is the center of the defense. It isn't. The defense is the network. Space-based infrared sensors watch for launches. Signals intelligence has been reading the rhythm of coastal units for days. Maritime patrol aircraft have been sniffing the edges of the battle space. The E-2D Hawkeye is not merely seeing the sky, it is stitching the sky together. The destroyers are not fighting alone. They are sharing tracks through a cooperative engagement web. And most of all, the strike group is not waiting for certainty. It is built to act on seconds. Here's what they got wrong. They planned against a ship. They're about to run into an entire kill web. At 21:07 and 14 seconds, the first launch plumes rise from the Iranian coast. The satellites see them before human eyes ever could. Hot needles punching upward, instantly tagged, counted, and pushed through warning channels. In the Combat Information Center of the lead destroyer, the alert lands like a hammer. Multiple ballistic launches. Source: Iranian littoral sector. Probable hostile. Seconds later, the E-2D begins sorting lower. Slower contacts lifting from dispersed positions farther south. Drones. Then the mid-band radars begin to catch the cruise missiles coming off the deck, hugging altitude, trying to disappear in clutter. No luck. The voice on the net is calm in exactly the way that makes your pulse jump. General quarters. General quarters. All hands man your battle stations. Now you're there. Steel deck under your boots. Fluorescent lights switching to red. Hatches dogged shut. Aircraft handlers breaking into rehearsed motion. Damage control lockers opening. Fire parties pulling gear. Young sailors who were drinking coffee 30 seconds ago are now inside a machine designed for the worst night of their lives. Could you make that shift that fast, from routine to survival in under a minute? On the carrier, flight deck crews begin clearing exposed equipment and locking down anything that can move. In Pry-Fly and the tower, voices overlap but never crack. In CICs across the escort, the picture sharpens. 14 ballistic tracks climbing, 16 cruise missiles threading low, 22 drones spreading wide, some real, some bait. The algorithms start predicting impact baskets. A few of those baskets sit uncomfortably close to the carrier's projected path. Time to first ballistic terminal window, under 11 minutes. This is the moment people misunderstand about modern naval war. They imagine chaos. Real combat at this level is the opposite. It is compression, training crushed into seconds. Thousands of man-hours paying off in one clean decision after another. The carrier turns, not hard enough to telegraph panic, but enough to complicate a targeting solution built on stale position data. Escorts spread and tighten simultaneously, each taking its role in the geometry. Electronic warfare suites come alive. Decoy doctrine is reviewed aloud. CAP fighters are pushed forward. One Super Hornet section is redirected to hunt the cruise axis. Another is held high in case the attack is masking something worse. At 21:09, the outer fight begins. The highest tracks are the ballistic missiles. They are fast, brutal, and descending toward terminal phases where seconds vanish. On the destroyers, vertical launch cells crack open in sequence. SM-6S roar into the night, white lances rising from the decks with a violence that punches the chest even from hundreds of yards away. A heartbeat later, more launches, then more. Aegis is not guessing now. It is solving. One missile, then 4, then 9, then the sky erupts. From the enemy's view, this was supposed to be the part where the Americans got overwhelmed. Instead, the first ballistic re-entry vehicle never gets close enough to matter. An SM-6 meets it in terminal flight and turns it into a bursting spray of heat over the water. Another is clipped, destabilized, then finished by a second interceptor. A third survives longer, maneuvering, forcing 2 shots, then disappears in a brilliant white-orange fracture high above the strike group. Count so far, 3 ballistic threats gone, then 5, then 8, and still the lower raid is coming. The cruise missiles are nastier in a different way. They hide, they bend around terrain, they use the horizon like cover. At low altitude over the sea, even a few extra seconds matter. The E-2D feeds the geometry. The destroyers and cruiser pass tracks through the network. Super Hornets push down range, radar flickering, then launch. Aim, 120S, streak out into the darkness. One cruise missile vanishes, then another. A third is forced to jink and climbs just enough for an escort to tag it with an SM-2. You hear none of this as cleanly as a movie would show it. You hear fragments, a muffled thump through the hull, the bark of clipped radio calls, the metallic shiver of the ship turning under power, boots pounding ladders, someone breathing too fast, someone else making a joke that isn't really a joke. Heart pounding. This is real. At 21:12, the drone swarm arrives on the edges, exactly as intended. Slow enough to confuse priorities, cheap enough to waste expensive interceptors, numerous enough to create doubt. Some are transmitting deceptive signatures. Some are flying erratic paths. Some are just there to die loudly. But this is where layered defense stops being a theory and becomes a slaughter. The fighters thin the outer edges first. The escorts then switch to what each target deserves, not what each target hopes to draw. Standard missiles for the most dangerous, ESSMs for the leakers, guns and short-range systems for the debris field and the desperate. Every layer preserves the next. Every layer buys seconds. Every second saves lives. You're in that combat information center now. Screens full of symbols, tracks turning hostile red, friendly missiles arcing outward in blue and green, your headset hot against your skin. Could you tell which contact is bait and which one carries 1,000 pounds of explosives if getting it wrong means fire on the flight deck? At 21:14, one of the anti-ship ballistic missiles gets farther than the rest. It separates late and dives aggressively, trying to force the closest destroyer into a bad shot. The first SM-6 misses by inches or feet, close enough to wound, not enough to kill. For a split second, that track matters more than anything else on the board. Then the second interceptor hits squarely. The re-entry body tears apart in a bloom of shrapnel and burning fragments, raining cold into the sea miles from the carrier. The watch team barely has time to register relief, because at sea-skimming altitude, 6 cruise missiles have just broken from the clutter. Now, the fight compresses to violence at visual range. The cruiser engages first, its launchers coughing out more interceptors. 2 cruise missiles die beyond the horizon, destroyed so far out that the carrier crew only sees faint flashes against the clouds. Another gets through the mid-layer, low, weaving, using the sea as camouflage. An ESSM rises from an escort and spears it close enough for the carrier to feel the concussion as a dull slap through the night. 3 more remain on this axis. Electronic attack rolls across them. Decoys bloom. The carrier turns again. One missile bites on false returns and dives into water. Another loses its seeker lock, overshoots, and skims past into darkness before a phalanx mount finds it and shreds it into incandescent scrap. The last one comes in ugly and stubborn, damaged but still alive, dragging smoke barely above the wave tops. This is the moment every sailor on deck fears. The close-in weapon system opens up, a brutal, mechanical saw of sound. Tracers slash the dark. The missile breaks apart, but not cleanly. A section of its warhead housing and fuel body tumbles onward, striking the edge of the flight deck and scattering flaming debris across parked support equipment. A tow tractor ignites. Fuel residue flashes. Men and women in flash gear sprint toward the fire before the smoke has even climbed. Not a kill. Not a mission kill. Not a crippled carrier. But it is contact, and in that instant, the political equation changes. While firefighters attack the flames with foam, the rest of the defense keeps working. The drones are now dying in bunches. CRAM launches, more gunfire, more interceptors. One drone cartwheels, burning into the wake. Another explodes so close to the water it throws a geyser into the air. 2 are jammed off course. One is engaged by a helicopter using crew-served fire after it stumbles low and unstable. It looks chaotic from outside. It isn't. It is systematic erasure. By 21:19, the main raid is broken. Final airborne threats still inbound. 7. At 21:20, 2 of those are cruise missiles trying to come around from an unexpected bearing, routed through a civilian traffic corridor where target discrimination is uglier and slower. This was supposed to be the clever part of the plan. Blend with commerce, force hesitation, hide behind the rule. It fails because the Americans have already stopped fighting the picture they were shown and started fighting the picture they built. The Hawkeye catches the geometry. A destroyer on the far screen has line of sight. 1 SM-6. 1 clean intercept. The last cruise missile Jinx left buys 4 seconds, then dies under combined fire. 4 threats remain. 3 are drones. 1 is a ballistic leaker whose degraded track suggests guidance damage. The escorts commit the shot anyway. Nobody on that net is interested in optimism. Another SM-6 leaves the rail. Direct hit. The track vanishes. 3 drones left. Then 2. Then 1. The final inbound is not dramatic. That matters. Modern air defense is not won by a cinematic climax. It is won when the last hostile symbol simply disappears and nobody aboard relaxes because they know a second wave is still possible. At 21:23, the defensive phase is effectively over. 52 launched, 49 destroyed outright. 2 diverted and lost harmlessly to the sea. 1 crippled missile fragments onto the deck edge, injuring sailors and setting a contained fire. No aircraft lost, no reactor damage, no catapult damage, no mission kill, no carrier stopped. That ratio tells its own story. But from Washington, from 5th Fleet, from every Allied operations center watching this unfold, the more important number is 1: attribution. There is no ambiguity. Launch signatures, track origins, electronic emissions, battle damage data, and ISR feeds all point back to Iranian coastal units and IRGC-linked launch element. The peace talks are still technically alive. The attack has just functionally killed them. Now switch perspectives. Back in that command bunker near the coast, the planners are waiting for the image they want. A burning carrier, a stunned White House, a forced pause. Instead, they get reports of intercept after intercept after intercept. Their strike package is collapsing. Some launch crews are already trying to relocate. Radar operators are shutting down emitters and moving. Command vehicles are displacing. They know what comes next. Because the flaw in their thinking was not just underestimating U.S. defenses. It was forgetting that every defended force has an offensive tail already cocked and loaded. Authorization comes fast, not recklessly, not emotionally. Fast because the legal and operational thresholds are already crossed. The order is clear: self-defense, immediate suppression of follow-on capability, destruction of launch networks involved in the attack, and denial of repeat strike options along the coast. In plain English, hit everything that can do this again. At 21:24, even while damage control teams are still cooling metal on the carrier deck, the counterattack begins. The first wave is invisible to most people in the region. It is electromagnetic, networks probed, links disrupted, emitters mapped, decoys distinguished from real command nodes. Electronic warfare from EA-18G Growlers leans into the coastal battlespace, blinding radar, confusing search sectors, and forcing launch units to either go dark or die broadcasting. Then come the Tomahawks. Destroyers that were intercepting a minute ago now pivot to punishment. Vertical launch cells thunder again, but this time the missiles go west, low and fast, skimming over black water toward fixed sites, communications relays, and coastal radar nodes. From below the surface, the submarine adds its own salvo. Now the hunters are firing from 3 dimensions. On the carrier, the deck is still partially fouled from the fragment hit, but not for long. This is where training becomes frightening. Fire under control, debris pushed clear, aircraft spotted. Within minutes, Super Hornets and Growlers begin launching into air that still smells of burned propellant and scorched paint. Each jet carries a purpose: AARGM-ERs for radars, precision-guided bombs for mobile launch points, standoff weapons for hardened targets, air-to-air missile in case somebody tries to contest the response. Could you step into that cockpit knowing somebody just tried to kill your ship and your friends are still on the deck behind you? That's the human part people forget. These are systems, yes, network, missiles, radars, links, but every launch now carries anger wrapped inside discipline. The target list is not random, it is methodical. First, the eyes. Coastal surveillance radars, over-the-horizon cueing nodes, mobile fire control sets near Bandar Abbas, Keshem, and farther east toward Jask in this fictional scenario. Then the hands, transporter erector launcher, cruise missile trucks, drone launch racks, fuel bowsers, reload vehicles. Then the brain, command posts, communications relays, hardened coordination centers, power distribution feeding the strike sector. Base, production, command chain, systematic target destruction, future capability denial. At 21:31, the first coastal radar goes off the board. Not dimmed, not degraded, gone. A missile slams into the site and leaves a black gap in the air picture. Seconds later, a second radar dies under anti-radiation attack as its operators make the fatal choice to turn back on. They thought brief silence would save them. It only delayed the shot. By 21:34, mobile launchers are being hunted in motion. This is where information dominance becomes lethal. A truck that was hidden 12 minutes ago is now a live track shared across aircraft, ships, and remote sensors. A launcher pulls under camouflage netting outside a service road junction. It is struck anyway. Another tries to blend with civilian cargo traffic. It is identified by route, heat, and escort pattern, then destroyed in open terrain. A drone depot lights up next, flames rising high enough to be seen from fishing boats miles away. Secondary explosions follow, then tertiary, then a rolling chain of detonations that tells every analyst watching the same thing. That site was fuller than they expected. This is no longer a battle, not a test, an execution. At 21:36, fast attack craft begin surging from sheltered positions, perhaps hoping to complicate the maritime picture, perhaps hoping to exploit commercial shipping clutter, perhaps simply acting on standing orders written for another era. They run into helicopters, maritime patrol queuing, and armed overwatch. Some turn back, some don't make it. Meanwhile, the carrier air wing presses inland. One pair of Super Hornets destroys a command relay node feeding launch coordination. Another strikes a missile support yard where reload vehicles are stacked too closely together. Growlers keep the air dirty for defenders, forcing hesitation and broken communications. The Tomahawks keep arriving in staggered intervals, each impact timed by distance, route, and target priority. While one part of the coast is still processing the first explosions, another part is already going dark. For every missile they launched, now many more are coming back. And that comparison matters. Their package was designed for symbolism. The U.S. response is designed for amputation. By 21:41, analysts assess that the original strike sector can no longer generate an organized second salvo. Launch crews are scattered. Fire control links are shredded. At least a dozen mobile systems are destroyed or abandoned. Multiple radar sites are burning. 2 known drone facilities are offline. Several command nodes are silent. The coastal network has not merely been punished, it has been surgically disassembled. Back on the carrier, medics are treating the wounded from the fragment impact. 11 injured, 3 seriously, none killed in this fictional scenario. Their faces are blackened with soot, adrenaline still punching through the pain. The fire is out, the deck is functioning. Aircraft continue to recover and launch. That image matters as much as any strike foot, because the message is brutal in its simplicity. You hit the carrier, and the carrier kept fighting. At 21:49, the last planned wave of counterstrikes lands against hardened storage and support infrastructure tied to the launch units. Secondary detonations roll across the coast. Infrared sensors register multiple sustained burns. The strike group remains at sea, damaged only superficially, still lethal, still connected, still in command of the engagement. 42 minutes after the first launch, the operation is effectively over. Final tally: 52 launched, 49 destroyed. 2 diverted harmlessly, 1 fragmented on the deck edge, 0 strategic impact on the carrier's combat mission. On the other side, 14 mobile launchers lost or abandoned, 6 radar and fire control sites destroyed, 3 command and communications nodes eliminated, 2 drone facilities burning, multiple support vehicles and missile stockpiles detonate, several fast attack craft neutralized, casualties heavily lopsided, strategic outcome, total failure. And that is the lesson. Modern warfare in the Gulf is not decided by who fires first. It is decided by who sees first, shares first, sorts first, and shoots with discipline across layers. The carrier did not survive because it was invulnerable. It survived because it was integrated. Because an E-2D Aegis destroyers, standard missiles, fighters, electronic warfare, decoys, damage control teams, and command networks all acted as one organism under pressure. Technology mattered, training mattered, but system integration mattered most. Iran's fictional planners in this scenario believed a dramatic blow during peace talks would create leverage. Instead, they triggered the exact outcome they should have feared, a calculated demonstration of information dominance and layered combat power. They aimed for spectacle and got technological purge. They wanted a bargaining chip and lost a chunk of their coastal strike architecture in less time than most people take to finish lunch. And that's what makes this scenario so dangerous to think about. Because every side in the real world is watching the same lessons. Missiles are cheaper, drones are more available, detection is faster, decision windows are shorter. Political leaders may have only minutes to choose between restraint and retaliation. One hardline faction, one bad assumption, one attack meant to stay limited, and an entire region can tip from negotiation to firestorm before the diplomats have even left the building. So how does this change your view of modern warfare? Share your take. Subscribe to join the discussion.